I'm so glad to interview you as part of our series of knowledge management case studies. But even though I'm your friend and I'm your KM colleague, I think that most of the world don't really know who Melanie is and what's this Merck or MSD that she's speaking about. So can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time today, Maura. My name is Melanie Adams. I'm working in Merck Pharmaceuticals at the minute, or MSD if you're based in Europe. And my current role is in the strategy office for digital manufacturing. And my focus is people, setting people up for success, and knowledge management. I got into knowledge management in my career about 7 years ago. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years, though. My expertise or my training in university was as a scientist. So I have a science degree. And with that, I said I should go get myself a scientific career. So I applied for the local pharmaceutical organization at the time was Pfizer. And I ended up working in Pfizer for 17 years of my 20-year career. I loved science. I'm very technical in my experience. I'm always working with product, testing product, making product, um, tech transferring product from site to site. And in all of that experience, that's when I identified knowledge gaps. But I didn't know I was identifying knowledge gaps until I understood what knowledge management was. And with that enlightening moment when I started being educated on knowledge management, I realized the stumbling blocks knowledge gaps can be. They can actually stop projects from being successful. They can stop products getting to patient if they're big enough. And they can stop individuals who are here trying to do their best work from being successful. So I've taken it on a mission to close all those knowledge gaps as much as is possible in the pharmaceutical industry. And that's me in a nutshell.
Wow. You know, the two fascinating things that in what I hear, even from your introduction, one, that even though you are a science person and that's your education and that's your um, characteristics, you understand or you say that you focus on people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what leads you. And the
Yes.
second thing I wanted to tell you that you really have courage. You're a brave person because you probably had a very promising career, and as of the importance of knowledge and its flow, you decided to redefine your career.
That
So
is
I'm
true.
really curious to this interview, and let us just jump in. We are going to speak today about a case study, business needs, and what was behind them, and where's the knowledge, and how did you, not only Melanie, but you and your team and the people that you work with tackle it. But let's start it step by step. And first of all, please share with us what are the business needs of Merck, or maybe you also want to introduce Merck or parts of Merck, and then start sharing with us what are the business needs that you are going to share with us today.
Absolutely. So, Merck, for those who don't know, is a pharmaceutical industry. We make lots of types of pharmaceutical medicines. We make tablets, we make vaccines, we make biologics. Cancer treatments, for example, would be something that we focus on a lot, the oncology area, which is very close to my heart. My own father takes one of our treatments for cancer. So it's another fire in my engine of passion around knowledge management, because the aim of our purpose in Merck is to always get quality products and safe products to our patients when they need it. And so that's everybody's purpose in the organization, but sometimes that's more difficult than it should be. So, personally, on my knowledge management journey in Merck and in any pharma industry I've worked in, tacit knowledge gaps are the business need. From my perspective, I have found, though, that that's not a common understanding in teams. And so sometimes you have to get people to a point where they understand what knowledge management is, what it is not. They have to understand the difference between explicit and tacit knowledge. And then when they're at that point, you are enabling them themselves to identify tacit knowledge gaps. After that, my purpose is to bring the tools to them to enable them to capture the tacit knowledge. But the tools are no good up front. I have learned that educating people first on what managing our knowledge is, what knowledge flowing in an organization could look like, and where their knowledge gaps might be. You see, in the pharma industry, we're so tightly regulated, our explicit knowledge is actually managed very well because everything has to be recorded. Everything is GMP or GXP because our regulatory authorities come and audit us and make sure we're doing things right, which is as it should be. So the capture of what we know that's written down and our experience and all that, we have GMP systems that we organize that knowledge in, which is why I know that the business need in the pharmaceutical industry is actually more tacit knowledge based. Our technical expertise, our scientists, our engineers, our operators, our utilities, our facilities. A lot of the time, we have people who've worked in that area for 10, 15 years. They had know all the tricks of the trade. They know they can personally predict the behaviors of equipment and what our results are going to be based on a chain of events. How do you get that knowledge and retain it in that functional area so that that person can move on to new development opportunities or new organizations, depending on where their life takes them, but business continuity remains. So I hope that answers your question, but that is absolutely the business need across the organization.
Very interesting, because what I'm learning is that the pharma industry is very well behaved when it comes to explicit knowledge.
Yes.
So as we see, when we look at other companies, many times we'll say, okay, they have tacit knowledge, but they didn't even start with their basics, or they have their basics not well organized of the explicit knowledge. So many times, even though there's tacit knowledge, organizations find themselves and KMs find themselves dealing a lot with explicit knowledge in order to put it in place and enable its flow. But what you're describing is that the pharma industry is in a higher level. It already has solved this problem, if I may use this solving verb, because never solve it all, but it's already good enough. It's 9, let's say. And now you're going to the next level. So I want to ask you, when you enter this gate, opening into the new world of tacit knowledge and tacit knowledge gaps, does the organization understand you at all? Does it understand that it's missing something?
It does after I've highlighted it. It's been it would be very unique for somebody to come to me without any pre-conversations and say, Melanie, I have a tacit knowledge gap. Normally what has to happen is I have to go to them and highlight the gap. And then afterwards they see it. It's like we're shining a light into the dark spaces that they just couldn't see. More often than not, it's not that they don't want to see it. It's that the term, I'm sure you've heard it, we've always done it this way, or this is just how it's happened, or I just do my job. That's kind of how people feel about it because they don't have the time to pause and reflect and say, gosh, do I have a unique approach to this job? And why do I approach it this way? Is it because of years of experience and troubleshooting and overcoming learnings that I have had that has made me execute this task this way? And I think it's just a different framing of the situation. I will add a caveat that the pharma industry is not perfect with explicit knowledge. We actually do an awful lot of knowledge mapping, but it's generally for non-GMP content. But overall, for me, the focus is actually more in the tacit knowledge, definitely. And people do not know until I have me and the team, should I say. I'm not the only person doing knowledge management in Merck, taking all the credit here. But it's not known until it's highlighted, for sure. Yes.
Okay, just a minute. For those who are not familiar with the term, what is GMP?
GMP is a term called good manufacturing practices. So good manufacturing practices are basically the rules and regulations that an industry has to follow. So there are certain expectations about safety and compliance that we have to meet, and they fall under what we call good manufacturing practices.
So for people that are not familiar with the term, we're speaking about the professional standards that are required of any industry company, of any pharma company to follow.
Correct.
Wonderful. So now I do understand that even though people are not aware of tacit knowledge gaps, the organization is, because there's a team of knowledge management.
That's right. Yes.
So probably that also took time, but it's a good thing that you have already a team or some people that deal with it. Do you want to share with us? Okay, so you have this huge, endless challenge of tacit knowledge gaps. What's your plan? What's your program? How did you start looking at it? From where?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So the pharma industry is pro knowledge management for two reasons. We have ICH documents that we have to follow. The International Harmonization Organization basically writes quality documents. And in ICH Q10, one of the quality documents, number 10, it calls out a quality management system. And there's dual enablers to that quality management system. One of them is quality risk management, and the other one is knowledge management. So that would be part of the root cause for knowledge management systems to exist within the pharma industry. For the tacit knowledge piece, the question that you asked me there is how I get people to see it is we actually raise awareness. That would be the starting point. So colleagues that work in knowledge management with me and I in tandem run awareness weeks, awareness sessions, boot camps, trainings, all those types of things. What we try to do is get people in a room to spend time with us, because I think sometimes just sending out newsletters is not enough. A lot of the time people are so busy, they glance at the text, and if they don't connect with it, they go, oh, that's interesting, and walk away. So what we actually do when we do get people in a room is we give them real examples from our personal experience. So being a scientist, there's a lot of tacit knowledge gaps that I personally fell into. And I think a lot of people connect a lot easier with you if you speak from your own personal stories. It creates a lovely ambience in the room and a bit of trust. Because if you're willing to show where you fell into a gap, then others are willing to speak up. And we create this lovely energy in the room where people are giving their own real life examples of what now they understand to be tacit knowledge gaps that they fell into. And they go back to their workplaces after this boot camp with a whole new lens, as we call it. And they're seeing all the things differently, because what we try to get people, especially subject matter experts, to understand is that you weren't born with this expertise. You started from scratch like every other new start. And you had to build that knowledge, that confidence, and that competency through your time and your experience executing this task. But we forget that, don't we? So when we have a new start and we're training them, we might impart some pure gold on them, but verbally. And that colleague's never going to remember that conversation when they have the onslaught of SOPs and other training requirements that they have to meet before they can start executing their tasks. When they stand there in front of that piece of equipment or about to execute the next step, they go, what did Melanie say again? I don't remember. Of course not, you're human. So what we're trying to do is systematically approach the capture of that conversation so that people can be more successful. Instead of saying, what did Melanie say 6 months ago when she was training me? We want people to be able to reference it somewhere where it has been captured. And we try to use simple tools to do that, like Take Fives, pre-job briefs, and ROCKS. ROC is an acronym for retention of critical knowledge.
One by one.
Sorry.
Let's stop for a minute. So, because you are so enthusiastic that you go. So, first of all, we understand that if the business need is business continuity, knowledge and business continuity, and of course business performance. So the solution is addressing the knowledge gap, tacit knowledge gaps, and making them shrink smaller. I don't think that we can ever eliminate them.
No.
So the tools or the strategies that you take, I'm speaking about the team, is one, awareness through these education boot camps.
Yes.
Education. And B, you said that within these meetings or sessions, you are trying to make them not only aware of it, but also desire. If we look at the ADKAR model, so from awareness, they go to willingness to deal with it.
Yes.
And already this awareness and willingness is not only a pre-step, but it's already part of their ability on their ongoing work, to notice that they have tacit knowledge and maybe document it even before you come in.
Yes.
Did I understand? Wonderful. Now, another thing, you gave us a great tip. You said, when I am one of them, because I'm also a scientist, they'll listen to me more. Why? Because first of all, I'm one of them, so they will open their ears, eyes, and mainly their minds to listen. And B, because when they open their minds to listen, I can give them better examples that relate to them, because I'm giving my personal stories that relate to them, and therefore they think to say, oh, it's a good thing that I listened, because here, and then you can open to the next step and start speaking about the solutions. So this is a good a nice best practice that anyone that's listening to our interview can start working and looking where they have people that maybe they're not scientists, but maybe they can take a scientist that's already convinced with them to some meeting and use that and open the hearts and minds of the people that we work with. Wonderful. I'm sure that the strategy has more components besides these awareness sessions. What else do you have as part of your solution? Later on, we'll speak about the toolbox. I didn't forget that you spoke also about a toolbox, but we're going step by step. So we have these awareness sessions. What else is on your annual work plan?
The annual work plan. So post awareness session, the next thing to do is, so this for me, knowledge management is all about people. And we mentioned that at the start of this call. I love humans. I love setting people up for success. I want people to come in and execute their tasks flawlessly. So the boot camp is very people orientated. It's that human connection. It's that trust that's built, and it's that real life examples of failure and making it okay to fail, because without identifying the risk, you can't close it with the knowledge. So then I take those people and I congratulate them after boot camp. I say, you're now a knowledge management champion. I now need you to go into your area of work and with your new lens, watch what's happening. Now, KM, the only way it can be successful in the pharma industry anyway, is if it's integrated into the flow of work that's already happening. If you bring in a new way of working, it's very, very challenging for it to be successful. So we have operational excellence in a lot of all of our manufacturing facilities, to be honest. And so what I try to do is get people to use the operational excellence strategies to find continuous improvement opportunities and use knowledge management in that continuous improvement opportunity. But the only people who can identify those are the people working in the area, not me. So that's what the boot camp and the awareness is so powerful for. Because if you empower people to understand knowledge management, identify knowledge gaps, because they're in the work area, they'll be able to see them in seconds. And then they can close those gaps through operational excellence and knowledge management tools and strategies blended together. So they're doing their typical day to day, but using knowledge management to do it better.
and sometimes they use the tools that you introduce to them, and sometimes they call you and say, Melanie, we need help. How do we tackle it?
Absolutely, yes. So there's a bit of consultancy that sticks around. I never leave a knowledge management champion on their own. If they're committed and they're interested and they're identifying knowledge gaps, if the small bite-sized tools that I give them, because if you give them all the tools at once, it's too much. So you need to give them something.
Stop. That was
Yes.
best practice number 2.
Okay.
Never give a full basket of tools at once, because people won't be able to consume. They won't be able to understand it all at once. So you have to give them the understanding that there's a full basket, but do it gradually.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Please continue. Our interviewees are listening.
Well, actually, we forget ourselves that we have tacit knowledge management experts. And I think we do exactly what other experts do, is that we find it obvious. So we assume others should find it obvious. And we forget that there are novices in the knowledge management space and that we need to bring them on that journey. So I do my best to stay in my conscious competence, that I'm aware that I'm an expert, but not everybody is. We start small. We start with just do it tools. And that's what I like to call them, because if you say it's a just do it tool without any crazy learning and training requirements, people are more open to it. They're like, oh, I can, that's easy. And you're like, yes, it is. So go back, give it a try, pilot it somewhere, and see if you're identifying knowledge gaps and closing them using these tools. And that's the hook. When they find it easy to use and it gives a return for investment of that small amount of time, then they're hooked. They want to know more.
Wonderful. So we know that knowledge management isn't easy, but what you're saying is that for the champions, you are looking for the do tools that are easy, and maybe later on you can introduce them with some more complicated tools after they succeed. So it's not only gradually, not only what's most important now, but what's easy is even before what's more important. Because if they won't be able to do it, it doesn't help that it's easy, that it's important.
That's true.
Great. Do these champions, I'm taking you back a minute. Do these champions agree to be champions before they come to these awareness bootcamp weeks?
No. So they come for the awareness, and we actually split it in two. We tell them they can be a knowledge management champion after the training, or they can be a knowledge management advocate. So the champion is somebody who's actively deploying knowledge management tools and strategies in their area, but the advocate is equally as powerful, because there's nothing worse than somebody trying to speak knowledge management language, which is slightly different to your typical day-to-day language, on their own, because everybody will be confused. And it's like that change model, the ADKAR change model that you said. If they're a lone voice speaking a different language, they won't be heard. Where if you have an advocate standing beside you that does understand what you're saying, and then you have two voices in the room, and that's far more powerful than the one. So we give people options. When they attend the boot camp, we can say, all right, if you have the capacity to be a champion, which is boots on the ground, actively deploying KM, we make it a development opportunity for them as well. So we tell them to put it into their work day, so that they are getting credit from their manager that they're doing extracurricular work to continuously improve the processes in their work area. And the advocates, then we ask them to back up their champions, because they understand what the champion is trying to do. So if the champion's looking for 10 minutes in a meeting to raise awareness about one of the tools, or if they're suggesting the use of one of the tools, the advocate's there as their backup. And we give people the option, what do they want to do? And a lot of time the advocate converts to the champion after a while. It all depends on their capacity at the time. But our mission is that everybody understands knowledge management, so we don't limit the audience. We'll train anybody in a boot camp that's willing to come.
Thank you so much. I'm in the field for 26 years. I never heard about this model of having not only champions, but also the advocates that are the backup of the champion. I heard the term advocates, but with different understanding or different roles, and I'll start using it tomorrow morning. Let's go back, and you were starting to share with us 3 of the tools in your toolbox.
Yes.
You said rock. So let's start with rock and later go on to additional tools.
Yes. Okay, so the rock is the very popular tool of choice, actually. So ROC is an acronym for Retention of Critical Knowledge. So that's a key point in the bootcamp. At first, when people learn about managing their knowledge, their frame of mind is, oh my God, there's so much knowledge. I don't know how to capture all the knowledge. And you're like, you don't have to capture all the knowledge. Focus on the critical knowledge. What is the knowledge gap that will make or break your testing method, make or break the process that you're trying to run, maybe put the product at risk? But we also integrate knowledge management because quality of product, safety of product, but safety of our colleagues is paramount in the pharmaceutical industry. So we actually build not a safety into knowledge management too. So we say that if you identify critical knowledge gaps regarding safety in your area, like labeling of bins, how to dispose of hazardous waste correctly. So a ROC is not an SOP. It will never, ever, ever replace your guidance documents and your regulatory documentation process. What I call the ROC is it's a backup tool. It's that bridge between the novice and the expert. Right now, how do we bridge it? The novice will approach the expert on the shop floor and say, can you come over here and help me? And then the expert has to stop what they're doing and go over. That's if the expert is on the same team. Sometimes the expert's on a different team and the novice has nobody to approach. So the ROC is a document of the expert's tricks of the trade on how they execute the task right first time, so that the novice can reference that material instead of the human, especially if the human's not available. But the ROC will never replace the human. What it'll do is give the person a chance to make the right decision, have the right information at the point of use, so that they can move over the barrier that they've just met. Because while our SOPs and guidance documents and GMP information is the source that you go to no matter what, sometimes it uses words that you might not understand straight away, or sometimes it's hard to interpret what it's trying to say, especially depending on when it was written or who it was written by. So the ROC can just give that little touch of clarity. It'll never be instructional though. It'll just be tricks of the trade.
So first of all, I understand that ROC isn't a process. It is the way the article, the body of knowledge looks after you finish the process of capturing it and documenting it.
Yes, well said.
Wonderful. And B, I understand that it is a decision support item, knowledge item, not like the SOP, which is a decision guidance, what to do. Here it is, oh, please consider this, what we call in our language, good practices.
Yes, yes. It's the extra good practices. And what we're actually trying to do now, because that's paper-based, it's a Word document, for lack of a better description, we're trying to transfer that into video format now. Because I didn't mention it earlier, but I am dyslexic. So for me, when I'm thinking about tricks of the trade, taking in information and knowledge, when it's solely paper-based, we're not setting everybody up for success, because not everybody learns the same way. And as your local friendly neurodivergent, I am very pro visual learning aids. So for me, the ROC is that critical knowledge that the expert knows through experience, written down on paper. But I would love to see ROCs, and we're currently looking into working on that, converted into bite-sized videos. Because if you're saying turn a valve slowly so that you don't increase the pressure, what does slowly mean? Slowly to you could be very different to slowly to me. But if I had a video showing me exactly what slowly meant, so that I don't impact back pressure in the system, then I'm going to be far more successful at executing my task. So that's the
First
kind
of
of.
all, wonderful. So what we're speaking about videos, first of all, in addition to the written docs, because they are searchable, the Word document is searchable and a video is less searchable. And B, you're saying that it has two advantages, what I'm hearing from you. One advantage would be that for people that are easy with the right hemisphere of understanding through visuals, through seeing, sensing, and not reading,
Yes.
not the left hemisphere, that will work better even. And the second thing you're saying is that there are cases where they can both work the same way. However, there are cases that you have to show how to do it. You can never really explain, even if you come with a clock and say 7 seconds for each turn. No one will really understand it. So there are things that the bite-sized videos are essential.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's continue. You spoke about 5 whys, which we all know. Why? Going deeper, not why because A or why because of B or why because of C, but why because A, why A because B, and going on deeper and deeper. What additional tools do you use or do you provide?
So what we try to embed in the flow of work is proactive mindset. So tools like the 5 whys is a problem solving technique, a very powerful one, but it's something you do after the problem has taken place. So what we try to do in our knowledge management capacity in Merck is to get people to spot the problem or the risk of the problem happening before they even begin. And what we do with that is the pre-job brief. So the pre-job brief is a set of questions that you can ask, and we give recommended types of questions like what would you notice or what do we need to be successful at this task? Little nuggets to help the conversation flow. And we trigger the use of the pre-job brief by asking another question. So every workday starts with a group meeting in the pharma industry. So I'm speaking in the pharma industry. It might not be the case for all. And we have encouraged people to include the question, is there anything new, unique, different, or difficult about what is scheduled today? What that does is it gives the opportunity for a new start or somebody who hasn't done the task in 6 months to put their hand up and go, yeah, I'm a bit rusty. Can you run me through what I need to do to be successful? And in comes the pre-job brief. The pre-job brief could be simple. Again, it's not SOP. It's tricks of the trade. So for those of us who's listening to this and you might be a scientist too, if you have stock standards in a fridge and you need to make a dilution, it takes 2 hours to get that stock standard to room temperature to be able to make the dilution. You want to take that standard out before you start so that when you need it, it's already at room temperature. You're more efficient. So this is where operational excellence and KM go hand in hand. It's about efficiencies as well as closing knowledge gaps. So these are just tricks of the trade that you would put into your pre-job brief so that I can execute flawlessly and right first time. And I have the right mindset going into it rather than waiting for the issue to be a barrier or for me to fall into that gap and cause a problem. And then we end up using the problem solving tools. We want to mitigate risk before that.
Yes, it's lovely how we said that the roots of KM in the pharma industry are in the QMS, in the quality management system, the risk management and the knowledge management. And we are now coming back to the end saying, okay, one of the things that knowledge management helps in, or the way that it opens, is the risk management, because that's where the nuggets, the K nuggets, the knowledge nuggets help to address the risks, and the risks help to open KM opportunities. So these are both connected, bi-connected in a wonderful way. Are there any interesting additional tools that you would want to share with us?
So the last one that we do, this is your starting point. If you were at my bootcamp, you would learn about the ROC, the pre-job brief, so you can be proactive in your mindset. And then we actually do the take 5 as well. The take 5 is their after action review but it's a really, really rapid one. So we do take 60 after action reviews as well, but that's a far bigger task for a project. So the take 5 we use in tandem with the pre-job brief. It's a plan, do, check, act cycle, for lack of a better description. So your pre-job brief is your plan, you execute your task, and your check is your take 5. And the take 5 is what was supposed to happen, what actually happened, what went well, and we're really passionate about the what went well, because you got to reflect on the good stuff. You shouldn't just reflect when things go wrong. You should just reflect and learn about the good stuff and the what's not going well at the same time. It gives people good vibes. And don't forget, bring it back to the human. If we're only reflecting when people make a mistake, it doesn't feel very good. There's actually negative connotations with reflection, because it's like, oh, I made another mistake, I have to reflect. No, no, no. We're trying to change that mindset. Reflect when the stuff is good too, and record the good stuff as well as the bad. So I'll stop there on my soapbox. So it's what went well, what's not going well, what do we do about it? What actions are we going to take to change this? And then who needs to know? The knowledge management piece that we're very passionate about is sharing. There's not only one group of scientists in one manufacturing facility in Merck. There are scientists doing the exact same job across facilities in the entire network of Merck. So why aren't they sharing what they're learning? Why aren't they expressing knowledge and creating that knowledge flow amongst all the scientists doing similar work in the Merck network? That's a bigger task, something I'm working on the side. But right now, in my smaller groups that I'm working with, I teach them the plan, do, check, act cycle by introducing pre-job brief and take 5 afterwards, no matter what. Reflect on the good and the bad, and then keep that cycle going with that continuous improvement piece there again. So you see the operational excellence connection. It's that pre-job brief brings in efficiency. Take 5 identifies opportunities for improvement, which is a continuous improvement project.
Very, very interesting. If I could add only one thing, after I would ask them what went good and what went bad, in order to learn, sometimes it's hard to learn after you ask only these 2 questions. I like to ask people, where were you surprised?
Ooh,
because when you ask them, where were you surprised, you are helping them understand where there's a gap in what we expected and what happened in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And this surprise can be a good one, and it can be a good one. But anyhow, first of all, it's a nice word that is positive. It's not a bad word.
Yes.
And sometimes someone said, oh, I wasn't surprised because I knew. So I said, oh, it's a surprise for the organization the way you work. It's not maybe a personal surprise, but it's a surprise for the organization. But asking them, where were you surprised, is the bridge between what happened, good and bad, and the why questions, analyzing what could be done differently or systematically in some new way, and taking it to the new route and the new success.
I love that. Thank you. I will absolutely take that with me.
Great. So we are now ending our time, and I wanted to ask you, what else would you say that you have to take care of? But you already start saying, yes, I have a full sharing project, and that's probably another business case study that we someday should speak about. So let's start packaging it. Let's start closing this discussion. What's your statement? What would you suggest us to take to consider, to think about, to do tomorrow if we are new KMer? Or you can speak to the KM community, to the KM novice, to anyone. What's your message to the world on KM?
My message to the world on KM is, it's not about the tools, it's about the people. The tools are an enabler for people to manage their knowledge and set each other up for success. When you're speaking to subject matter experts that you need their critical knowledge and they need to get on board with KM so that it's retained with a team, use it as a form of recognition so that they get kudos for the work and the contributions that they've given to their team and their organization. So yeah, it's very people orientated. If you know people are struggling in a certain area because tasks in that area are really challenging, that's where you start. And you iron out those kinks and you create those good vibes and you make that work environment better because people are more successful at task execution, no matter what that task might be. And it'll just grow from there. So bring the good vibes and think about the people and find where people are struggling most and solve those problems first. That's your success story to bring to the rest of the world.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think that we will have to end it for today. It was a
Absolutely.
great pleasure for me to interview you. Thank you, Melanie, so much. And now I understand that there's another good reason why MSD is performing so well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thanks all who've watched this and listened. I appreciate your time too.